Today we're going to be installing a Catless downpipe on my 440i. I am setting up an E85 tune, and when you run higher ethanol blends, you want to switch to a Catless pipe because the ethanol can clog up a catalytic converter. So even though I don't necessarily like the smell when running like pump gas and 93 octane, I decided I didn't mind running it with E85 since it smells better. So we're going to be installing a VRSF pipe. This is the one I have. It's the older revision. They've updated it since this one came out, but I got a good price on it. Bought it used from a forum member. So I'm going to be installing that. First thing I'm going to do, like always, is disconnect the battery because there are a couple sensors that you're going to have to unplug just to avoid any electrical gremlins in the future. I take that off. Then you remove the intake, get that out of the way, and jack up the car, and there's only a couple bolts to actually get the downpipe off. To remove the intake, it's pretty simple. All you're going to do is come up to this sensor. This clip pops up, and then you can squeeze it in and slide it off. Get that out of the way. And then what we're going to do is loosen this hose clamp and pull it off of this pipe, and then there are just 3 grommets underneath the stock air box, so you can just pull it straight up. Here we are with the intake removed. It is hard to pull it out, so just kind of take your time. Those grommets are really stiff and hard to pull out of. One thing to mention, I know Keys Motorsports always talks about it, but this is one of those grommets on the intake, and there should be another one in this bracket, but it came off with the intake box, so you can see it on the bottom. No big deal though. You just take it off of that post, pull it off, and then slide it back into that bracket before you reinstall. Removing the O2 sensor is pretty easy. This wire is just clipped into the heat shield, so you slide it out of the clip. And then up top, you have this connector on the engine harness, and it's the same as the other. Unclip it, and then you push down to slide it out. To actually unscrew the O2 sensors, I used 7/8 inch box wrench. They have the fancy O2 sensor sockets and stuff, but they're kind of hard to use since you don't have a lot of room to the side of the engine bay. And also that secondary sensor all the way in the back is kind of hard to reach, so a regular box wrench will access it a lot easier. So now the O2 sensors are removed, and something I forgot to mention up here on the connections to the engine harness, it's on this kind of slide. So you have to take that bracket and completely slide it off and move it out of the way to completely remove the O2 sensor. So that's what the slide looks like underneath it. But now that we've got that off, we only have 2 more things we need to do on top. So the first are these 2 bolts for the mounting bracket on the downpipe. My VRSF downpipe doesn't have the bracket, so I won't even need to reuse those, but they are 2 half-inch sockets to get those off. And then all the way down here, you have your V-band bolt right here. So you'll also need a half-inch socket to remove that bolt. So now we're under the car looking at the downpipe. I just kind of jacked up the passenger side to get access to it. And you're going to need to remove 2 nuts. The first one is this nut that actually holds the exhaust clamp that connects the downpipe to the midpipe. And then we're also going to remove this nut that mounts the midpipe to the exhaust hanger, and that way you'll have more flexibility in the midpipe and you can actually wiggle it off to get the downpipe off. So now I have pretty much everything ready for removal. The V-band is off, the O2 sensors are off, the downpipe bracket is unbolted, and the midpipe is loose, and the exhaust clamp is loose. So now the downpipe is removed. It didn't come out as easily as I thought it would. It wasn't coming out of the space in the top, and there was not enough flexibility in the midpipe to slide it off. So what I did, went to the back of the car, and if you look by your exhaust tips, you'll see under the exhaust hangers there's like 2 half-inch nuts that you can remove and basically drop the rear muffler, and the midpipe will sit on the center brace so the whole thing won't fall. But you remove that and you can actually slide the exhaust back and forth. So that was what I needed to actually slide the midpipe off of the downpipe, and then I pulled the downpipe out from underneath the car. So I know it sounds like a lot dropping the whole exhaust, but really it's just that bolt on the midpipe and then the 2 bolts at the exhaust tips, and the whole thing will hang. So it was easier than trying to wiggle and jiggle the downpipe for an hour. But these are the two downpipes compared. So pretty excited. The VRSF is definitely like more of a smooth design. I was thinking about just gutting the stock Catless or the stock catted downpipe, but that smooth taper should perform better. So I've seen a lot of questions about whether an aftermarket downpipe needs the mounting bracket or not. So I just wanted to show you guys what's actually under the car. You have this metal bracket that is bolted to the transmission, and it holds your starter cable right here. And it also has your downpipe bracket. So a lot of people think that it's mounted to the body and it's some kind of like super secure mounting point, but really it's just this piece of sheet metal that's bolted to the transmission. And the way it works is when you're on the assembly line at BMW, the engine, transmission, turbo, downpipe are all one assembly, and the car gets dropped on top of it on the assembly line. So they need everything to be in a compact package. Nothing can wiggle or move or interfere with their automation and all their robots. So having this mounting bracket just better secures the downpipe for alignment on the assembly line, and when they're putting the mid-pipe on, it also helps make sure it's in the same spot every single time. So if you're installing an aftermarket downpipe, it's not as important. It doesn't create rattles. It's not going to put like extra stress on your turbo flange or anything like that. It's just there for aiding the assembly in Germany, because when they do this, every second counts, right? They want to be able to install this as efficiently as possible on their assembly line. So if you get a good price or a good deal on an exhaust that doesn't have the mounting bracket, don't fear, it'll work just the same. If you get one with the mounting bracket, that's always cool too. Also, not to mention, but immediately after your downpipe, you have this same hanger that I was talking about for your mid-pipe, and this is actually a better secure point to hold up your entire exhaust system. Like I said, there isn't another connection until all the way back to the muffler, so this is what actually holds everything up. And by mounting this to your downpipe, like your downpipe connects here and it's an 1.5 inches farther down, so that's a better mounting point than that piece of sheet metal. These O2 sensors go back in a specific order. So this first one that's a little bit darker, it's your upstream O2 sensor, and it goes in the hole that's closest to your turbo. You know it's the right one because it has 5 pins. See 5 pins in the connector. So when you put this one in, you're basically just going to reinstall it the same way as it was originally. Just plug it into the first O2 bung. The second one, that's lighter, it's clean because it's installed after your catalytic converter, and it measures the efficiency of your catalytic converter. So if you have like the P402 code for Catless or catted efficiency, catalytic converter efficiency, this is the sensor that's causing it, and it's really common when you have a Catless downpipe to get that code. So you either want to add an O2 spacer onto this one, or get a tune that disables the code so that you don't get the check engine light. Or you can just ignore the check engine light if it does come up and clear it every once in a while. It's kind of up to you. And you know this one, because it's got the longer cable and it has 4 pins. So when you actually plug them into the car, they only go in one way. One's a 4-pin connector and one's a 5-pin connector, but you still need to make sure that you actually mount them in the correct holes in the downpipe. Otherwise, you'll have a lot of issues. So just make sure you install the O2 sensor with the 5-pin connector in the first bung closest to the turbo, and then install the second connector that has 4 pins to the second O2 sensor bung. So another thing, I don't want to be one of those guys that shows how easy everything is installed on his car, and then when you try it, none of it goes that easy, right? So my car only has 12,000 miles. Everything comes on and off pretty easily. But I have seen some cases of higher mileage cars where this screw doesn't come off. It just spins, and the nut isn't like held in place. So see on mine, like the screw will spin and the nut will stay in place in general, like that. That's how it works to actually loosen it. But if the nut spins with the screw, the V-band won't come off. So some people have had to actually cut this screw and then go to, like, you know, Home Depot Motorsports or whatever and buy some new hardware, get a new screw and nut, and just replace it when you reinstall the V-band clamp. And it's also a good idea just to add some anti-seize onto there, so no rust or anything prevents it from coming off in the future. So I just wanted to point that out in case you have a higher mileage car. Another thing I want to mention, so the VRSF Downpipe has been known to have a tight clearance to the mid-pipe. So when you try to slide it in, it'll be really hard to fit in. I tested mine and it slid into my mid-pipe just fine. I don't know if that's because it's lower mileage or because the downpipe is used, so the previous owner had it like kind of clamped down for a while. Maybe that reduced the outlet size a little bit. But some people go to like AutoZone or Advanced Auto and get an exhaust expander, so it'll go into your exhaust and then open it up and kind of stretch it out so that you can slide your downpipe in a lot easier. So again, that's another tool maybe you just want to have on hand, especially if this is your only car and you can't do, you know, runs while you're working on it and you just want to have everything ready before you start. Just rent it from your AutoZone store, and if you don't need it, return it and get your money back. So like usual, I'm not going to show the entire reassembly process, but I will show you this gasket I'm replacing on the downpipe. This is the part number. I couldn't find it on FCP Euro, so I bought it from my local dealership for about 25 bucks. But as always, I recommend FCP because you'll have free lifetime replacement, so check there first, and maybe they've added it to their catalog by the time you're ready to do this. And all it does is kind of fit in this slot around the edge. So I'm going to install that, get under the car, feed the downpipe up, and just reinstall everything. So if you have any questions, leave a comment and I will respond as soon as I can.